So we'll open the November 23rd, 2021 Planning Board meeting. This is being recorded and will be posted online. However, if anybody is recording, they just need to let us know. Anyone? Okay. 7 o'clock, town planners report.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The Hudson Drive Solar Project that was discussed in brief comments from a couple months ago is close to being submitted. And as related to that, the consultant for Tilcon, Coach Jensen Miller, requested that the solar party, Coach Jensen Miller, I have a conference call to review some of their obligations. Town Council had recommended an update to the restoration plan to reflect the change in use for that portion of the property, and we're going to take advantage of this to hopefully fold in some of the findings from the ongoing feasibility study for the Sam West and Hudson Drive Connect. 74 College Highway, Callets and Pistols. You may recall two gentlemen bringing that forward for a cannabis cultivation and processing facility. I know that they've been a little bit waylaid with the state and COVID constraints over the past year, but they unfortunately and are looking to tidy up things here. Just right. We'll make some people in the waiting room. There we go. Board permits are still valid for that project. Looks like they'll have to take another look at the Board of Appeals. But I'm going to update with that. Looks like it's hopefully we'll move forward to 2022.
Do they? Did special permit deadlines get pulled and added to the end of it? I'm not sure. I mean, that's expired, isn't it?
No, that one is actually good through July of next year.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So during the time period when they implemented the opportunity for 3-year permits, that's how that one came together.
Okay.
So for the time being, that's all set. It'll be critical for them to make sure they started the project and not run up against an issue.
Okay.
I was approached regarding a proposed cannabis cultivation facility over on College Highway, 771. Just south of the Rosen condominiums. The news that I had to give to them was that lies in the business restricted district, and as such, we don't have a mechanism that allows for that. In that project, it's just agricultural conservation for cultivation, and then some limited opportunities. R20, well, R40 and R20 are one version of those in the bylaws, but nonetheless, so I just wanted to report that wasn't a good fit for that particular prospective applicant.
Is that Walls?
No, 774 as well. This is the
other side. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
All right. Following up on Andy Reardon's discussion from the last meeting, he and I are collaborating with some research for some facilities that we had in mind to use for we call them comparison and discussion tools. We would expect to see his application come forward for discussion and be heard in January. That's the target.
You aware of his arrival during the public comments last meeting?
Yeah, I heard it at the last
He
meeting.
handed us a copy of his special permit and wanted the planning board to review it to see the terms, how they were developed or whatever. But the recommendation was that he talk to John and submit an application to modify that special permit if he wants to. And I guess you could look at the one down by the Notch Travel. That's another storage facility, but it is a different animal because it's not over the wellhead. that kind of thing, so.
That's.
No, I mean, I heard what he said, but if he has specific issues with his permit and thinks it's either it should be changed or he was treated unfairly with other things, he should bring those specific issues to us in some way, rather than have us tell him what we think are the
Yeah.
issues with it. I mean, that's not our job, but if he has specific issues, certainly bring them up and we'll consider them. I mean, I'm not even sure it has to be an application. You can do it in a discussion and we can, see whether it's something that's worth an application. You can save them the fee and the effort, but I mean, that was my thinking. I'm not sure that's something that we should be doing. If we're trying to figure out what the potential.
But we don't know what he wants.
Yeah, that's it. So.
And to be fair, I'm holding permits for those sites as requested, just as a courtesy that I would give to any other member of the public. But yes, I would expect that we'd be driving that process with the request, specific requests. Ken Eggleston over at 141 Connemara Road stopped by my office last week. He's further developing an approach, a philosophy to parking out there. Let him know the next opportunity for an informal discussion would be on the 7th of December. He may reach out to see if we can have some communications prior to that. But that's essentially want to let you know that ball is still rolling and they're working hard to try to come up with a scenario for the board to consider at some point. Last item I'll mention is that I did get a request for information from Jennifer Nolasco through the town clerk. The nature of this request has to be fairly specific in order for whatever receiving party there is to give a meaningful response. So for the sake of discussion and making sure that I discuss with the board, this is requested of the planning board or applicable board. The request is any bylaw or municipal law governing the rental or lease of berths/slips of marinas in Southwick. And the only reason I want to mention it right here is that the request, I think it's fair to say that lease slips and berths aren't called out in such terms. It falls into the category of other, where the board is given discretion in matters where it might concern operation of the site. I think we all know the subject of this particular property had to do with parking. So the response, I think, will likely be such.
I don't know how you respond to it.
And that's where part of my struggle is. On one hand, again, I don't have a specific reference within our bylaw that says that makes mention of leased or rented berths and slips. So it falls into that other category.
But do we need to pull in there?
I'm sorry?
But do we need to make one?
That's a fair question.
I mean, obviously, this is a new situation. We got, some other places on the lake that want a situation too, right? Walk is a walk on water,
Yeah.
although they're closed for the season, but it's gonna come back again.
For sure. And it remains an ongoing matter with through enforcement with the zoning office.
And the Conservation Commission. The lake with water, marinas, whatever,
Through the, this one actually went through the state.
state.
So I think
License.
we'll call it the pinch end of being, the state in their license says, all right, you can lease these slips so long as they're approved by. No berth facility shall be rented or leased if such rental lease is subject to one or more municipal bylaws until such time as the town of Southwick Planning Board or other applicable municipal agency authorizes said rental or lease in writing.
The response in my mind is that the use of the property to rent or lease marina slips is governed by chapter 125. That's the answer. So, I mean, she's not asking it for, I mean, I know why she's asking it, but she's not asking it for a specific property. She's not asking it for a specific zone. She's not asking it for anything. She's asking it generally. So the answer is it's governed by chapter 185. That's the answer.
That makes sense. I think that covers, I think both ends of that. I think that covers that one. So,
I mean, I did, it's,
appreciate the feedback.
whatever you say, it's gonna come back to bite you.
Nobody.
Well, thank you. That brings my report to a close.
I bet it is.
7:05, public comment. Anybody have anything that is not on the agenda tonight they want to bring to the board's attention? Anybody on Zoom? Okay,
Stand by 1 second, please. Unless you see it, if you saw it in your photo, but
I didn't see any.
Okay.
Look at the only 3 people on the, so. 7:10. 125 Sheep Pasture Road. Continued public hearing. For the estate lot special permit, stormwater and site plan approval. Come on up.
You again.
Oh, no chairs. You gotta get a chair. You have to bring your own chair.
UILC.
Well, look at it.
Oh, you got a soft.
I like that. Thank you, sir. No, I appreciate that very much.
Nothing.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen.
that is
For
correct.
some reason, I want to know your name and address.
I'm Jay Gherkin, 36 Miller Road, Southwick, Mass.
Okay. So, I'll let John update the board, but it sounds like we've reached a decent place with conservation.
Yeah.
And so we can act on this, I think, but I'll let John give his report.
Super. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Not yesterday, but the Monday before, Mr. Gearkin and representatives from all our type associates met with conservation to review your project. If you recall, the conservation matter mostly dealt with crossing
Right.
out there, and if you will, the upgrade of the access driveway to something suitable for this estate lot.
Right.
DPW comments had been addressed prior to, frankly, the first presentation from our Rebecca Associates. So conservation moved to close and worked on the conditions for the project at that meeting. And that's my understanding. Spoke with Gene Nielsen from Conservation State to get a quick update. So what the status was, and it looks like with that being satisfied, we are at least in a position to move forward.
Now, one thing I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna cut a whole bunch of trees down. I'm not gonna clear cut the place. I'm gonna try, my son's an arborist. We're gonna trim, certain trees, but I'm gonna leave as much foliage and natural landscape as I possibly can. I'm not in here to make a,
What's that word, Mike? Cubic feet of trees or hectares?
Yeah,
What's that special measurement we use now? Metric.
yeah.
preservation.
I'll get
what
back
it
to you
all
on
is.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you cut them down, but it takes a long time for them to grow back. So you gotta be very judicious with your trimming.
So looking at Steve Arnold's house,
Yes,
you're to the right of it, facing his house?
yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna be between the
You ask me
between,
that every time.
Oh, yeah,
Let me
yeah.
check your pulse.
Oh, you know.
I'm between the 18th hole and the 9th hole of the fairway. And when I retire, I can take my cart and drive up over the hill and I can mow the rough and stuff for Edgewood.
Very good.
all right. Any questions from the board? Any issues before we close this hearing? Okay. Any
This
audience comments on this one? John, when's the next conservation?
Next conservation meeting.
Okay.
I don't, I've already met twice this month.
Be in December.
The day before our public.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, do I hear a motion to close this hearing?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Do a roll call vote. Michael Doherty, aye.
Marcus Phelps, aye.
Richard Ottinger, aye.
David Sutton, aye.
Dave Spina, aye.
Okay. Good, so my inclination then is to draft up a decision for the next meeting and put it on the next meeting and vote on it at the next meeting
Works.
and get that signed and out the door.
So far, so good?
Yeah.
Oh,
December 7th.
It's okay.
December 7th,
Ooh, Yeah.
I don't know, but we may sink your whole
I
plan.
know. I hope not.
so, yeah, now that that's done, I think we can start in on the decision, and I think my inclination now is to do any votes with the decision in front of us, so it's just cleaner.
Sure.
You know, we'll draft up the decision in the meantime, and on December 7th, we'll vote on it and should be all set.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it very much. And have yourself a very good Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank
You
you.
too. Thank you.
Put it back on.
Well, I think we're at 8:20 thing in there. I think we're stuck on that. So, 7:20, you know what I mean?
Right
Oh,
now,
yes.
just
So I'm not
one
sure we
person, I can recognize.
Move that up.
Looking at you.
So,
Do-
if anybody wants to do some tap dancing there.
It is 7:20, so we can.
Yeah, we'll move that one and then move that, and then do people and continue that. Okay. 720, 159 Berkshire Avenue. Continue public hearing on the stormwater management permit application.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we have received revised calculations. You may recall, at the end of September, we issued a comment letter, joint comment letter with for my desk and Randy Brown's, requesting some additional information. That was received here on the 16th. Couple of figures were done in pencil and we needed a few scans. So we did receive that information today. Randy, I'll be leaning on him for his technical review at this point. Did coordinate with the applicant's representative, Derek Hale. And he did acknowledge the fact that we would be requesting to continue, or we would be continuing this stormwater permit hearing to presumably the 7th. While we work through comments.
Has conservation been looking at this? I guess they've been
Conservation,
involved some, no?
in the past,
Yeah.
has indicated it's outside their jurisdiction.
No wetlands, right, okay.
What are the odds that this thing is actually gonna have some meaningful place to go? So,
I did speak about that with the engineer, and he understands, and I'm of the inclination to say that there's still some back and forth before this is ready to approach a decision.
meaning with us, or meaning that he's gonna need a lot of work to get to something that's useful for us to look at.
I think we're getting closer to some more workable information, but I would expect that Randy Brown will have, another round of comments on when this review
Okay,
comes to a close at this stage.
so then we might as well at least filter it through here, and then we can read it and set a time frame. So why don't we put it on, we have the next.
So you're thinking to take it to the second meeting in
No, we'll
December?
put it on for the 7th, just to keep it on, especially this one. I just want to keep it I want to keep some eyeballs on it to make sure that we are.
We're good after 7:20. The tree hearing and not,
It's a construction company.
664 are hearings.
Berkshire Avenue.
What's
Those are set.
660?
That's Joe Wall's new, that's the bank, key bank.
We've already advertised that for 7:10.
Mhm.
Grove.
So that's gonna take a little time.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we put, why don't we put it on for 7:25? And the tree removal, is that advertised?
Mhm.
Tree, oh, another
Okay.
new one. New one.
Tree warden.
Aha.
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to continue 159 Berkshire Avenue to 7:25 on December
7.
7th?
Marcus Phelps, so moved.
Do I hear a
Rachel
second?
Singer, second.
Roll call vote, Michael Doherty, aye.
Marcus Phelps, aye.
Rachel Singer, aye.
David Sutton, aye.
Dave Spina, aye. Okay. All right.
There's a bug on here. Like a bug, like-
You see anything from? I know
Usually
this
about
week?
an hour. There was a potential conservation for, ancillary.
I'll tell you if it comes back.
Um,
That's not right. That's normal.
It's not 7:30.
Yeah, so we got, here's what I'd say. So we got a couple minutes before we start Depot Street, which will then get continued. So we're gonna have a little bit of time to kill tonight. You know, one of the things we're starting to get worked through, I think most of the stuff, I don't think we have too much of a backlog of things. There's a few things being advertised, but not a ton. You know, which I think factoring in the master plan subcommittee as well and what they're doing, but it may be worth doing some proactive things with the bylaws over the next, you know, 6 to 8 months. So if anybody has thoughts on a process of looking at things and making suggestions, even if they're suggestions to the master plan subcommittee, or they're suggestions that are being acted on through the planning board in some way. But if folks have, you know, specific bylaws to look at, a specific process of reviewing bylaws, just, I mean, I think it's worthwhile, put eyes on stuff every so often, say, what have we learned over the past however many years, and figure out whether changes should be made to these bylaws. I think we get a little bit behind on stuff when we're putting out fires and dealing with all the stuff that's coming in and not being proactive. So if there's stuff that people want to discuss today, certainly do it, or at any other meeting, but we're gonna have a little time to kill today. So if people want to bring stuff up after we continue Depot, then please do. Or want to think about it, please do. All right, why don't we open up the Depot? Just get that
Hopefully it's approved.
open and continued. We can do that on the agenda again.
For the seventh, yeah.
Thank you.
Is it 7:45 ago, or is that gonna be pushed out too?
That's gonna be quick. That's gonna be quick, but yeah, it's gonna go. We gotta talk about it, but it's gonna be reasonably quick. Tonight,
Yeah, we're not gonna,
not too much to talk about.
we don't have to talk about it.
Special bit.
Oh, no, I'm just curious.
Okay, so 7:30, 42 Depot Street, continued public hearing. We see a decent shot that this is gonna be a good place for conservation come December 7th.
That's, that's a loaded
I'm not
question,
saying
but
go to MGM, I'm just saying you're thinking it's a decent shot.
it feels like there's movement. Yes.
So we have a request to continue requesting continuation of the public hearing scheduled for tonight's meeting to allow time for Arlevette Associates to continue coordination with the Conservation Commission. Hereby requesting to be placed on the board's next available agenda. So my suggestion would be at 7:45 on December 7th. With the idea that there's a decent shot that we'll be having a substantive conversation about that. Any comments, or does anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to continue this until December 7th at 7:45.
You want to stay here? You want to get up?
I'm gonna recuse myself.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We got a second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Michael Doherty, aye.
Richard Ottinger, aye.
David Sutton, I,
Dave Spina, aye.
Lisa Thornton, aye.
You've been so adamant about it each time. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't.
Well, last meeting I got up and walked over
know.
and stood over there
I know.
because all of a sudden,
I think
it's
I'm
not
stopping
happening
halfway.
again.
Now that I've given people 3 minutes to think about potential bylaw changes, anybody have anything?
3,
Yeah, I gave you a lot.
Are you, did we have the wireless continue till December 7th? That's a
Mhm.
public hearing.
Okay, that's cool.
So we skipped tonight, go to the 7th because we had a discussion about looking into getting a consultant on board to look at that from a technical standpoint, and probably have to go to the finance committee to request funds to do that, since we don't have that in our budget.
Continue.
Anyway,
It got continued. Beth,
Yeah.
42 Depot got continued.
Oh, okay, so we don't have to stay.
You don't have to. stay.
unless you want to.
Yeah, You're welcome to.
Okay.
We enjoy the company.
He can take you up to supper.
Continue to win.
December 7th.
7:45 on December 7th.
We got pizza coming.
All right, thanks.
Practice makes perfect.
Guess we're not counting in on the
so
pizza.
you're talking about being proactive with the bylaw. That's what's going on with the wireless.
Mhm.
And we probably should draft up some text to adjust the bylaw. And I don't know where we're going with the 5G part of the wireless, but apparently Springfield is being totally wired, according to an individual who recently visited a little bit with us offline, so to speak.
Is that
So-
5G
5G.
for Springfield?
So they may have something in their regulations to address that. Apparently, it's just a matter of installing small transmitters to receive a signal from a tower and then retransmit it or something. I don't know. But anyway,
Small devices on telephone poles every
yeah.
1,000 feet.
So that seems to be the wave of the future, is to have 5G. So we don't have that in our bylaw at all. We have nothing speaks of these small transmitters or, how they would be positioned wherever they would be located. So,
Nothing repeaters?
Yeah.
Do we have something on repeaters?
Oh.
We're following with pretty much the same setup.
We have a part of our bylaw.
I'll have to check on that.
Yeah,
I thought there was.
I don't know. Anyway. The wireless is open for a look. at. And then we've got the short-term rental subcommittee, which is being led by Mr. Utzinger. Thank you.
He didn't get far.
Well, Megan
You
had
gotta volunteer.
Megan had the list of all the
I think I got
members.
far
We
with
had
it.
like
Yeah,
seven.
I
seven
contacted everybody
members.
and
Yeah.
they're all ready to go. I asked Tom Fitzgerald to step in place of Tammy Spencer, and he said, yes, absolutely. I emailed you a list of contact
Didn't get
info.
it, didn't get it.
Oh, I printed you a copy
There
as
you go.
well.
So that'll trigger whatever that committee comes up
Thank you.
with. That will be a draft of a bylaw
Mhm.
to insert in 185
Mhm.
for short-term rentals.
It's on here.
So that'll be a significant, hopefully, improvement. And I don't know where we would look for examples because we have all the lakefront properties, which are kind of the area where rentals are looked at.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other places, but
Those are
Seems like the
pollinators.
lake is-
Those are
We
pollinators.
we talked about this one before, about allowing businesses to put rental properties on the second floor. To offset the pricing of their businesses.
and we have a bylaw that allows that now, mixed use.
Right.
Yeah. But that would just be in the business restricted area.
I don't know if it's Suffield or West Suffield, but they do anything on their side of the lake?
Oh,
Good question.
good question.
Yeah. Anybody we can reach out to.
Yeah. Good, good. So Richard will have a full report, I'm sure, at some point in time.
Some point.
End of the winter when it comes back.
Oh, at the, before the annual town meeting.
It's pressure.
Okay. Anybody else have thoughts on bylaw reviews or anything to look at proactively?
It's probably premature, but we might learn something from this whole discussion about parking lot spaces and boat slips and how those commingle in a waterfront business.
I mean, that's one I thought I had in my head of looking over that table again, proactively, maybe a useful exercise. And, you know, certainly related to this, but just in general, and just sort of saying, and I don't know when the last time nothing's been looked at. It hasn't been looked at since I've been on the board, I can tell you that, which is now 7 years. So, you know, that may be worth putting some eyes on and seeing if anything, if it still rings true, whether things need to change, whether we can tweak things to, you know, deal with changes in situation. You know, I wonder whether that trailers one has come up, right? I wonder if that needs some tweaking in any way, or whether that would work out fine, and this is more of an issue with health and whoever else, to sort of
Please,
work
maybe
on language.
clarification of what we're talking about by trailers.
Right. So. that one I-
Mobile food establishments.
But that's not.
We
what
learned a new word.
18532 is about, though.
But we learned that new term.
New terms. So we need a new definition then in our.
Yeah, we should add that. right?
Can we get these things that you're picking out printed out that we have now, so we can have it on the table,
Yeah,
we
so
can
why
look
don't
at
you-
it?
if you want to just, if I do it now?
No, not now.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, we'll
For
pick it up for
future,
the
so-
next meeting.
Keep it in our folder.
Yeah.
Don't you have
Don't
your,
you have your
don't
copy?
you
You're gonna
have
give me
your
copy
big
of
185 with all your tabulate?
Yes, I do, but
pretty
I'm
color
trying to
coded?
narrow it down so let's keep.
Oh,
looking
you don't
every
have a
time.
color.
No.
I don't have a color coded.
He's got it all up here, Jessica, all up here.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. The Rolodex.
The Rolodex of the cobwebs.
The other thing that I'd like to do proactively, I guess, because it was raised and it was Dory's not here, but that's my memory of the person that first raised it months ago, which is a very good suggestion of having something on the website It sort of provides an overview of the process, you know, and sort of helps people understand what it is that we do and what the public hearing process is and things like that. Just give a, you know, frequently asked questions type of format that is on there and can be accessed. I think that's something that we should probably sit down and start to work through and get something up there sooner rather than later. Because that seems to be an issue that has arisen. So, anything else? No, everybody's perfectly happy with every bylaw and have no changes that are needed.
Should we delete any bylaws? Should we take any off? We did take out the phased growth
We didn't,
bylaw, which was never really used.
no, it's still there.
I thought we removed it.
Unless
It
was
expired.
removed,
I
yeah.
thought Attorney Beglane recommended that be removed.
Maybe to my, it's still online, right? If you go online, it's still there. And I don't have a memory of town meeting removing it. It's expired. It's no question it's expired. It's not applicable in any way, shape, or form.
So we should remove it then, it's expired.
Probably should get removed.
So we should do a formal,
Yeah, but that's,
just like we did on the marijuana moratorium, we had to go through that process.
and I'll certainly, just for Dave Sutton's benefit, look and see if there's any words I want to remove out of the bylaw.
I think we got to bring grandfather back.
Get start a petition.
Ah,
I think that was a bad idea. It
Yeah,
started this
yeah.
whole problem,
Yeah.
the grandfather.
The other thing too is, forgot about it, is 315. We may want to look at 315. Generally, but you know, also that whole recreational area stuff seems to be a bit of a, you know, I think what, you know, I think that the waivers that are being requested are not unreasonable, and I think that we may want to look at, you know, whether those things need to be in there, or whether we want to change that around in some way. Not that you don't have that recreational area or that open space area, but just think of a better way to get it used. I mean, or whether there's certain situations where it doesn't apply. I mean, I just.
well, we tried that as far as a pocket park, that concept, which is fairly current, to have a small playscape in a subdivision. But it's been the approach of most designers that because they're providing open space, they don't need to provide any kind of a playscape. So, I mean, that's the concept.
But then you put a playscape in, who takes the liability?
The homeowners association,
So that's one more
as,
thing they get to
as,
pay for.
as anything else would be done. They're quite common in other areas of the country. And they're very useful.
I mean, here's, I mean, I certainly have opinions on it, but I
Los
don't,
Angeles.
I think you should, I think it's probably worth having a discussion about whether that's a useful thing to do. Or, I mean, I just think, you know, granting a waiver every single time seems to be a silly thing to do. So having something that's either gonna enforce it, you're gonna change it and enforce it, or you're gonna get rid of it. I mean, I think you gotta pick one of those. But I mean, I think granting a waiver every single time, or getting in situations where you have open space that no one's gonna use, and then we gotta deal with, you know,
Self-harm.
this, well, no, but this, you know, this stuff where we're dealing with the access to it seems to be something that is worth a discussion. But that's also not a bad, I mean,
And we can do that without
correct, it's not about a town meeting,
a town meeting vote. We just have a hearing.
correct. And that's also something that, and we've done this before, but I'd like to do it again, which is, that's one I'd rather keep tabs on pretty quickly and get ahead of before we're stuck in a application for a subdivision and we don't have what we need in the bylaw. So that one I like to keep on a short leash. All right. Close enough to 7:45. Noble Steed Crossing. Request to release lot 16 from the covenant in lieu of, you have a folder on that?
We do.
You can take whatever you.
So, Mr. Chair, just to recap, we had received a request from the developer, to release lot 16 from the covenant in lieu of bond. DPW director had provided calculations 2 meetings back related to that point. This is the more recent one right there. Where his finding was that the total value of work remaining was less than the value of the lots after release, prospective release of lot 16. However, was observed at the meeting, the margin was fairly close at 26,000 based on these estimates. Subsequent to that point, Mr. Brown did provide an updated letter touching upon some conversations and requests that we had with and from the developer subsequent, between that first meeting and sorry, the date on that one, November 9th. And so at the last meeting, the discussion was tabled to tonight. Don't have new information from the developer. Conservation did provide a copy of an enforcement order related to some siltation of jurisdictional areas. The property that, I'm sorry, this is dated the 21st, so 2 days ago. Just for the sake of discussion, whatever factor that might have in consideration.
So conservation has something out on this development at the moment. There's an issue.
That's right, and granted, it's conservation jurisdiction and certainly related to matters that they monitor and enforce, but just reporting to the board that a copy was provided to my desk.
There's no clock ticking, right? This doesn't generate any kind of deadline of clock.
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm not aware of one. I mean, my inclination at this point in time is I see zero reason to release it. So I would just dump it into routine business, and if things change, we can take it up again. But I don't see any reason to deal with it now. Anybody else have any?
Has there been any word? You're supposed to get back to us and still nothing?
I don't, there's been no.
Well,
Did
the
we get an
last
attorney involved, or
communication
did
was
we
that
not?
the attorney was going to be communicating. from now
I
on.
haven't heard yet of one.
It seems to me we should write a letter to them saying we need to know what your intentions are related to completing the road.
But I don't,
Because that was a thing that came up in Randy's letter. So I think we need to formally communicate. Or either that or take a vote and deny the request. Just say we don't have enough information to action on the request.
I put it back in his lap.
I mean, I don't,
Like, grant them a denial letter until we're waiting on input.
yeah, I mean, I don't mind putting a deadline in it. I'd give them a little
Put it
bit
back in
more
his
time to sort of deal with stuff, whether he needs to get an attorney involved. There's bigger things that he wants to deal with. I don't mind giving him the time to do that, but
That's fine.
I mean, I don't mind also giving a deadline for us to vote on it. I mean, probably into January would be my guess. I'm not sure taking it up. We actually have 2 meetings.
We do.
So I'm not sure taking up in December is worth it. I think giving them a little more time is fine. But it just came up somewhat recently.
Just double check and make sure there isn't any kind of clock once the
Yeah.
request is put in. There's definitely
I
not.
don't think they're.
To the best of my knowledge, I'm happy to test it. Well, that's a wonderfully ambiguous answer, isn't it?
That's
I
right,
did-
John.
I did review the matter, but certainly there's a
Well, nothing's stamped in,
exhaustive review. I have not.
nothing is stamped in at the town clerk's office. So That's,
Just so you know.
that's the clock keeper. Keeper of the clock. But I would write a letter of some kind.
I think I'll put
saying,
it back in his hand, let him
Yeah.
say, this is what we need. And let's sit there until he gets back to us. You know, give him a time frame, 60 days or whatever. Say, we're here for 60 days, we'll shut.
I think they already understand that. They knew that Randy was looking for information, and then Randy looked for clarification. He got bupkis. And the answer after that was, you'll hear from our attorney, and the attorney hasn't said anything yet. So why are we gonna generate something for them? We're waiting on information.
You have the time frame on, so when we take a vote to maybe either approve it or deny it, we have some sort of window.
Did
But
someone
we don't
come
have
to the
to.
first meeting?
Don't-
No. right?
Don't tie our legs in a shackle to a time frame or specific.
No,
request.
I don't think anyone has appeared. It's just been John letting us know and
And
Randy
Randy has
sending the memo to us on
Because
status.
did we convey to him, whether we conveyed it to him, he certainly got the message after the first meeting. But did we convey to him our issue? I mean, the first meeting was there's concerns about the about the valuation and whether this was something that was appropriate to release. Obviously, other things have come into play, arguably, which affect the valuation as well. But I think more generally with counsel for not releasing something. I guess I don't have an issue with putting it in writing and saying, you know, we've had some concerns about releasing this. You can certainly listen to the meetings or read the minutes and understand them. And you can certainly come to our next couple meetings, but if we haven't resolved anything by the first meeting in January, we're intending to, you know, sort of take a vote and move it off of our docket. And I don't mind doing that. But I also don't mind carrying it because it's not a big, as long as there's no timeline to it, I don't really care about carrying it.
Maybe carry it again to the next meeting, and if we don't hear anything, then we'll send a letter saying, hey, we don't hear anything, but our second meeting in January, we'll be voting on it.
It's not a
Sound like
public
that?
hearing or anything, it's just a little business, drop it in there and leave it.
Yeah. And I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna carry it for 6 months, but
No,
I
that's
don't mind
right.
carrying it for a little while to sort of see if something happens. And it's not like if we denied it, we can't just turn around and
Request it again.
change the date on the letter and send it in again. I mean, so it doesn't matter. Okay,
So
All
we'll
right,
go
so
under routine business.
we'll put it on routine business and we're gonna actually take off the time that's on the agenda for routine business so that we can deal with them when there's, you know, like 15 minutes we have to kill like we just did.
Did a good job.
And so we'll dump it under routine business and then we can take it up at other meetings.
What happens if he responds prior to that meeting and doesn't become routine business, now it becomes a whole discussion? Is
It's,
kind of time in it?
I mean, routine business is just sort of a carried item. You can take as long as you want to discuss it. This one doesn't really need a time. You know, it's just it's almost administrative to some degree. You know, we can deal with it at any point. Could have dealt with it in town planner's report, I think, if we really wanted to. So I think that's my all right, so we'll move that. I don't think we need a vote or anything. We'll move that to routine business. and
No letter, yeah.
deal with it. Talk about it again on the 7th and then figure out where we're going. Okay. All right. We've got about 5 minutes to kill.
Approve the minutes?
We have to sign the 20th of July. That's
Yeah,
already.
you guys can do that if you want.
That's already been approved.
Yep.
You have an official copy?
Is it in here?
Finally put in July 20th to bed.
Yeah.
I got it here.
We voted on it, but they needed to
Right.
reprint it with the
We go.
additional stuff on it.
Okay.
You weren't there?
I was, whoa, not at the last meeting when we approved it. So,
Okay,
Oh.
Chad, not let me in.
and forgot to sign it. future chair, Dave Sutton, took the reins.
What did I do? None, I wasn't there that day. I won't be there tomorrow either. Picture me as chair. You want to have a good chuckle? How long do you think it'll be before I get arrested?
And then I
His
do-
profanity will totally be allowed at the meeting at that point.
I'm thinking the phone, remember the small thing in Baltimore, because there's nothing here in the street.
Look over your shoulder. quick, quick.
I'll deal with it.
We need to put in
You
there-
need to get this, get that clock fixed. Mike, can you put that on the agenda for the next meeting?
The petition committee. There's a petition committee.
Everything else, stuff, all kinds of law and everything. When is that intended to be? Comments or?
You can do that in there?
No,
The
I
application itself,
we
or is that-
emailed to us like that morning, I didn't have a chance to consult them. so.
I think that's.
Just wanna-
Make sure things say what they're supposed to say.
Yeah,
I would say, just go,
there was a couple
You get a
things in
chance
there
this week,
that
go
I
through
really
it.
wanted to-
I would put Boston.
Yeah. Wicked awesome.
go through it, if there's anything, you know, any attachments or any type of emails that you think are useful for the application
Have a
itself.
bylaw.
just go into that.
Hey, see,
Absolutely.
that's perfect. You got training.
Uh-huh.
I go home and they tell me something funny, I cry.
December 7th.
Who's next on the chopping block?
From the 7th to March.
No, I was
Are you just wanna-
like,
for Christmas?
how many grandkids you got doing ballets? I got a kid who launched a Cerso ballet.
Does everybody have an even Thursday?
I just tried the car.
That's terrific.
I'm gonna get a meat pie tomorrow. I'm gonna meat pie up there.
Never saw planes in Baltimore. You know,
Any loop in either place, which in, so,
Scanning, digest it.
No. Passers, useful.
I'm
you sent
excited.
an email.
She just started eating beef again. She hasn't done that.
He comes to a meeting, comes to a meeting. I definitely know. Okay.
Well, this is a petition one time, been reading it online several
Let
times.
me start that here.
No,
I don't even want to hear
I don't know anything about it.
it.
Okay.
Go on Facebook. You hear everything, you learn everything you need to know on Facebook.
Thanks. That's a loaded question.
Uh,
I just saw a sign coming down, sorry.
All right, 8:00. Greens of Southwick West subdivision. Decision. Everybody has it in front of them. I have it on my computer here. If anybody has changes, we can make them as we go along. And actually, why don't
Next one.
why don't I pull it up as a
No, that's
share?
your last. Mine.
No, I haven't voted yet. Why don't I do it as a share screen? Can I share this? Do you need to hit something for me to share?
You're driving us.
No, no. In
Really?
any way. I don't think. No, we're the John dotted workstation is the post. Disable screen share.
Have I?
Now it works. So we have that up for everybody to see as well. Please remind me as we go forward to do that so that people can see what we're working on. Just sitting here. It makes it easier for folks. All right. Any, I have to go through this.
Beautiful.
Okay. Let's start with this first page here. Any changes that need to be made?
Hearing none.
Okay. Go to page 2. Let's start with section 1. Any changes that need to be made? Okay. Was that the only letter that we?
No, we just need information.
The other part? Yeah, right, we have. We must have got some from,
Our friends
Chief
at
Anderson.
Department of Public Works. No?
Probably looking at that stuff. Wait for a moment, please. There we go. That's why I couldn't talk quick. So this is an email from my desk detailing a conversation I had with Chief Anderson, Suffolk Fire Department. Noted for the application files, I followed today on a request. This is September 21st, I didn't say that, 2021. Regarding by Chief Basher Road and the modifications to Greens West. Chief Anderson noted he had no issues with the Greens West changes. So long as any parcel has access from College Highway, will be signed a College Highway address.
So you'd add a D there related to Chief Anderson. To say he provided some comments, and I guess the key is that address, the College Highway.
Yeah.
It would have a College Highway address.
correct, as long as that got put in here. I'm not sure I care whether, well, we're not to put in the general fund. If we have the police, we're not to put the fire.
Yeah, I would say. Give him credit. He took the time to review the documents through the plan.
You do have that,
Since everybody's present, like, you might want to just take my name out of the first page there. Since I won't be voting on it.
Everybody's qualified for five
But when it's the fan, we don't get involved.
people.
Five of you were here.
So it's the fan that we're involved.
What's it set up for signatures? Signatures do not include Jessica.
Hence.
Hence, Jessica Reed, that's request her name. Removed. On page 1.
Everybody okay with that? That's right.
Send it over here.
All right. So. Anything else that was in
You
the
took
file?
Jessica's off.
Between. All right, we'll take that off. That's fine. For her request, even though.
Self-determination.
We did receive DPW comments
Self-sanctioned.
that they will address.
Essentially B.
And then ready to do a follow-up?
No follow.
Well, that's fine.
They have the same problem. It happens a lot. I can tell you that right now.
Everybody okay with that?
Shall I read out loud?
Can you read it out loud?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All comments raised by the Southwick Department of Public Works were addressed to the satisfaction of the DPW and the planning board.
Everybody on Zoom is judging your typing skills.
By who were they addressed
They
by?
should.
Addressed to the section that they were addressed by the
applicant.
applicant.
I like your grammar for this. That was very good. I did not have proper sentence. All right. So anything else that we need in general findings? You have Randy's stuff here? Get the file right here. I just want to see if there's anything that we need to put into that condition. I want to make sure that we have that. And actually, give me one favor, just so I can have it straight in my head. Let's off the 4 things again. We got the
4 items?
the four requests.
Oh, I'm sorry. To combine lots 23 and 24.
It's in here somewhere.
Grant
I
the
know,
trying.
It's in the decision.
I want to have it right in front of me so that I'm not missing anything.
So that, I'm sorry, it was to combine lots 23 and 24 with remaining land to be transferred to lot owner of lot 9.
Yeah. Access to 20.
Access to lot 20 from College Highway.
That includes a removal of a buffer.
Yes, with the removal of the vegetated buffer.
Where's the shooting range? We're putting the shooting range in.
Open space access.
Yep, open space access. Was number 4. Or, well,
What am I missing? Wasn't there 4?
there was 4, you just took 4.
Yeah, the conveyance of the land of the triangle.
Well, part of lot, combined
That's where
lot
you're looking
goes
for a
to
whole
the
other
other.
subject, but it's not.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I know, right?
Um, How did we deal with, I got added to the site for the modification, right? Everyone says, right?
Water service, they mentioned there's a remaining water service on College.
No, but what needed to be changed on the site plan got changed. There's no driveway, so that got removed.
To be fair, the submittal thus far is just the,
Oh, no, that's right, never mind, no, I do.
just the line work.
Yeah, yeah, Yep, yep, yep. That's good. All right. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, anybody else have anything else from the general fund? No. Modification findings. Tell me why these are looking this way.
So item number 2 right there was in language that was shared with the board in discussions with Mr. Phelps earlier. We've added a little more beef. So wanted to show what was taken out, which is a very general, broad brush across the finance commissions. In this case, I'm breaking up the definitive plan modification findings and the special permit modification and site plan approval modification as 2 separate categories. Or rather, that's the proposal.
So that becomes an A, right? Instead of a 1?
Yeah, we'll just consider it.
And it doesn't have to be in italics.
No, that was just for,
Yeah.
to highlight for discussion right now.
All right, is everybody okay with the italic sections going in and the section that's being stricken coming out?
Okay.
Yes?
Yep.
See?
Oh, no, you're not.
Okay.
First would be, there's this one.
It's right here.
I'll type in modification. Configuration modification combined stuff. Right. Um, all right, everybody okay with section 3 here?
Yep.
Like a sporting approach, it was ambitious.
We don't need a blank page in there, but we will correct that later on.
Give me a paper cut.
Maybe I'm maybe opening it up on a map. We're not gonna do it. Section 4. So wait, hold on. I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. This is. Okay, all right, so this is the actual original waiver. And for I'm gonna go back to 3 here and say the planning board, I'm gonna, this is for the approval, right? So the planning board.
So you say you have to put in another
No, I
voting
want that.
section?
No, no.
another
I just want,
voting
I want the
section?
language to be the same. I'm gonna change 4. It's really what the planning board. Modification. So the bottom part of 4 will say the modification to this waiver is that the access to the open space will be grassed with 24 to 36 inches, 6-inch diameter stone boulders set at 50-foot intervals in an alternating pattern at a 10-foot width running on the west side of lot 8. Like running the entire west side of lot 8, correct?
That's correct.
All right, everybody okay with 4 with those changes?
Are we clear what we mean by 50-foot intervals in an alternating pattern? Does that mean you got 2 lines of boulders? In each line, they're 50 feet apart and one is shifting
Staggered.
relative to the other?
It's
Or
staggered.
does that mean as I walk down the path, every 50 feet, there's gonna be a boulder on one side or a boulder on the other?
No, 50 feet here, 50 feet here, 50 feet here. Staggered.
No, but that's a fair point. So is it 50 feet between boulders on one side? Or is it 50 feet between this one and that one and that one?
I think we wanted, at least my intention was 50 feet between boulders.
What's your game plan, Brian?
Currently laid out such that it's 50
50 feet,
parallel
right.
from each other. There was discussion about alternating them, so it'd be 100-foot spacing.
Yeah.
You know, that I guess was kind of left up to the decision process.
Yeah.
But currently, as it's laid out by our spec, it's 50 foot spacing parallel to each other.
50-foot spacing.
They're
Every
in
50
line,
feet, There'll be 2 rocks on
Right,
either
okay.
side of the walk.
So they're not alternating.
But
not where
That's
the
way
stakes
that
are.
it was- that's
Correct.
way it
not the
was
way it's staked now,
Okay.
but we were offered an opinion from the public that they would appear more aesthetically pleasing if they were alternated. Yes.
I think the question is.
So how you describe that?
Well, but the question is, how many boulders are actually involved?
Before you get into the language, figure out whether we're going to approve them, right? If we're not gonna approve it, it's a moot point.
Right.
So what is the board's thoughts?
I mean, I've driven out there, I think, certainly the way it's marked right now, where they're directly across from each other, it's pretty well delineates a path, which I think is an intent, in my mind. And I also think that if you were to take one of those lines of boulders and shift it by 25 feet, so it'd be not directly across from each other, it'll also
So
equally
instead of
delineate.
like this, these are still 50 feet from each other, but there's 125 feet,
Well, the way you've drawn it,
you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but I don't think you drew what you intended.
I think John did a good job.
Well, I'm just asking,
Good
like,
one.
what's your intention?
I'm
You draw your
gonna
rocks,
do
I'm
my
gonna draw
own
my rocks.
personal rocks here.
Show me like 50 feet,
Right.
increment 50 feet, and show me how you're doing it.
Our class would be.
It's easy.
Oh, yeah, this is critically important
Our
stuff.
class would
because,
be.
This is,
People think we make big important.
we need to get a designer in here.
But John
Call it back in.
Goddard
Is there
is
somebody
a
who
designer.
ever did any landscape
He is
design
a
that could
designer.
offer
Didn't we
up
already
an
vote on
addition?
this?
No one. No one.
Didn't we already vote on this?
Where could you find
No, we
somebody?
did not.
Huh.
Just closed the
discussed
hearing. We discussed it.
I'm guessing those are.
Still 50 feet from the other side.
Somewhere most of the
I
rest of the
can't
time.
afford-
That-
I can't afford for this. Well, let's see.
This is what I think at least that's what I was envisioning.
We'll get that notarized, I mean,
Yeah, on either side of the
Can you sign that?
trail, yeah, sure.
send a town record.
I don't know why there's.
Yeah, yeah,
50
yeah,
feet,
yeah.
This
Yeah, I
is
think that might
50
be an
feet, this is
Yeah,
50 feet.
but
I
this
think
is-
if you
Okay.
had
This,
that there.
well, this was just my.
Okay.
this was my shorty.
Why two here?
Well, you either gotta go, if you're gonna alternate
At
them,
the very beginning.
at
you're
the very
gonna
beginning,
start-
you're either gonna start with an extra boulder there, or I suppose you don't have to have a boulder there, but. Or you're gonna have
That's a fair
25 feet.
point. You
for
wouldn't
the
have
first
to
one,
start.
yeah, one.
Yeah, start and end.
I think you wanted to start and the ends to have directly across from each other poles.
This is the most discussion we've had all
Well,
night.
you know, it's important
Well,
stuff.
David Sutton thought we solved this at the last
This is a,
meeting.
we're solving some serious problems.
Mr.
here.
Yeah,
Sutton
think
thought
about
we
coming
solved
up
this
with
at
a
the last
modification
meeting.
ever again, actually.
I'm glad I feel forward for this.
There should be two opposite here.
Have we gotten to the point where we're discussing like color of these things yet?
50.
I mean, I think that complicates. it.
Bright
I think-
red and
I
yellow.
think just having
You can see them.
every,
Yeah.
I think just having.
Straight up.
Straight up. 50
Straight
feet,
up. I
directly across from
like
each
I
other,
like my
call them.
rock straight up.
I'm totally fine with that.
I think
I think it looks, the way it's staked
There
out
we
right
go.
now, basically.
Correct.
Looks good.
Let's go eat some turkey.
How do you describe that?
Okay, I'm trying to.
Let's eat some turkey.
Now it's easy.
Oh, is it?
No, we just take out that word.
It's easy.
Yes.
Go take the easy route and it's less expensive.
Take that in an alternating pattern, right?
Beautiful. Back on the
Like
rock.
I would believe
Got
Roger is
another
gonna
element
have
going in,
some-
use them there.
Actually, let's talk about the beginning and end, right? We want one there is one, I assume, right at the.
The way it's staked right now, it's right off the drive, right
There's
off the
two.
road there, cul-de-sac.
There's two
Yeah,
of
no,
them.
and that's
Right, so-
50 feet there.
Two.
Right.
Right.
When they get to the end, there's only 12 feet, so it's one.
Set at 50.
Need a
foot
smaller rock,
Intervals
proportionate.
starting,
This is fun.
He's gotta get rid of that.
There's a sidewalk there, if I recall, right at the sidewalk, or whatever.
Yeah, the sidewalk. Is there a sidewalk? On that point, there is.
I can't remember, but where's the first stake? Is it?
I think the first stakes are like maybe, if I recall, I got a picture.
All right.
Can I find
But
it?
those
No.
stakes aren't permanent. That's not a good reference point.
No, I'm not, I want to know how far off the road it is. Approximately. To give a-
Is that the sidewalk?
There should, we need
Far
the
up the
plan
road
with
at
the
it.
sidewalk. We need the plan.
Well, why
with
is the sidewalk on that?
The backside of the sidewalk, I believe is 9 feet off the curb.
9 feet off the
So
curb.
when the staking starts
It's like,
right on the town right away.
yeah, there's like one stake just inside of the sidewalk and the other one's pretty much even with the end.
I'd say the sidewalk, that's a good reference.
So I'll say starting with it.
12 feet. So 12 feet.
How many feet?
I'm starting, you be quiet.
Starting with it, about that.
The edge of the sidewalk.
No, you can't wait. You're not gonna put the boulders right on the edge of the sidewalk, right? So.
Are you gonna put the boulders right on the edge of the sidewalk?
I'd probably keep it back a couple feet.
That would make sense, I would think.
And the
I'm gonna-
sidewalk
I'm
is-
gonna put starting within 5 feet of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
You
I
want
mean,
some
we're-
poor dog
we're-
stubbing his toe
The
on a
intent
rock.
is
as it goes
basically
down.
put the rocks exactly where it was specified.
This way, right?
That's not mine, David's.
We're just trying to make sure the language matches
Right.
what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It needs to be specific.
Yes, it's just like a.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
like a stone, you know, 50 feet, right?
Yeah.
When you get to the end, you got 30 feet, you got 32.
And we're gonna have to,
So you cut the
we're
stone?
gonna have to just suck it up and put a couple more rocks
Or
there.
put them, and then just divide it out.
It's a walking path nobody's gonna use.
That last 30 feet is gonna be
This
sucked
is
up.
true.
It's a walking path nobody's gonna use.
Ever.
This is why we paid the big bucks.
You need a direction off that sidewalk?
I prefer stones like slate.
It will be.
All right, how about this?
There we go.
Yeah. something fancy.
We get quartz, something shiny, quartz.
Stone boulders set at 50-foot intervals at a
I like
10-foot
Polished.
width, running the entire west side of
Ooh.
lot 8,
Polished
and
marble.
starting within 5 feet of the sidewalk with boulders within 5 feet of the end of the path.
Sounds good.
Perfect, Mike.
Okay,
Some thinking, Brian.
Polished marble.
Add a couple posts.
And there's
At least one more.
the second spot.
all right.
It's significant. It could be the basis of further discussion.
In the original conditions, there was a second reference to the stone pathway, which is why we're keeping that information.
I just want to,
I think we should go with the square ones. What about the square ones? My,
You're gonna get sent to your room.
There should
if
be
you don't know that.
natural stone.
they got them square. Okay.
maintained by the homeowners.
It'll be easier for the brain damage to occur when you fall into the side of a giant square rock.
It's easier to mow around those square stones.
Don't start, you'll be quiet over there.
What?
It's like,
You
has
just
anybody
be-
ever
Why?
heard of a
You
weed
started
whacker
it.
You just
before?
roll your
They
chair-
started
turn your
it
chair
all
around, face the
around
wall.
stones.
Your
Sorry.
time out here.
You didn't realize that it is easier.
You can see the moon.
That means it's time to go home.
Wow, I saw the moon
It's
at
only
about
20 to
8:45
2.
this morning. when I was
It's only
letting the kids
20
on
to
the
2.
bus.
It's been 20 to 2 all
Still there
night.
in the sky.
What are you meeting?
Okay.
Moon is
So
still
you
out.
got this morning. too. Sorry, the
It's
sign.
supposed to be going still out.
Been a long day for you.
All right, is everybody good with that?
Perfect.
Sure.
Okay, section 6. Road, section 7. That's an modification of the definitive plan.
Section 8.
Section 7,
See, 6 is clear, that's the vote, right? Okay. 7. Is this still gonna stay in town?
No. What was it before?
2 flag lots. And one of those was combined.
Yeah, it's light down on Marblehead. I was trying to figure out what this thing was.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. That's section 7, section 8. Good. Any questions on section 8? Okay. And this is the vote on it.
The, is it Roman numeral? Another motion to be changed to 8.
Yeah, what about 7? 7 and 8. Huh? Yeah, 7 and 8. Am I right?
No, you're correct.
Yeah, that's
With
right.
that addition, that's like, yeah.
First,
Okay. Are we good? Have we spent enough time on this
well,
pathway?
we're doing it
I haven't got the
live,
decision
right?
whether it's square or if it's
It's
gonna
not
be
from
round.
Memorex.
We made the motion.
I was stifled and my feelings are hurt.
You're just gonna have to be a goldfish.
All right, I'll get over it.
Put that back.
We're gonna have to add the definition of a boulder to
I'll
be
our
good.
list of definitions.
All right, so we'll deal with that
Bring grandfather back.
page there. I don't know why that's there.
We have to sign that? We don't get to sign.
I want to just change one thing. I don't.
He's changing one thing.
I thought it's square.
In section 3, I'm gonna say the modifications made. As
I agree with the lawyer.
You're all the way back to section 3. That was on your mind the whole time?
Rules by the planning board. I always thought.
She's a lawyer.
I don't remember I had the deadline.
Still got a couple of papers, that's the refrigerator.
And you changed the reference to the boulders twice.
I'm gonna put imposed by the planning board.
Under 4 and under 5.
5 is already in there. I think. Imposed is the
Put
following.
some John Henry's on some paper here.
All right. Are we ready to vote? We need 2 votes.
2 only?
Whoa.
You're good.
I want to let Mr. Mogul in for the vote.
Yeah. No, don't let him in. He's trouble.
All right. So do I hear a motion to grant the modifications to the definitive plan approval, which are set forth in sections 3, 4, and 5?
Marcus Phelps, so moved.
Richard Ottinger, second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Michael Doherty, aye.
Marcus Phelps, aye.
Richard Ottinger, aye.
David Sutton, aye.
Dave Spina, aye.
Okay. Wait a second. Let's do this.
Oh, you're making X's.
Good job.
No
Okay.
no initials. Huh?
Next vote, do I hear a motion to grant the modification to the special permit and site plan approval as set forth in sections 7 and 8.
Marcus Phelps, so moved.
Second,
That's Sutton.
Yes, David Sutton.
Brownstone's first one, that's it.
Real roll call vote, Michael Doherty, aye.
Marcus Phelps, aye.
Rich Hutzinger, aye.
David Sutton, aye.
Dave Spina, aye.
Glad you get over that date. All right, so that's all set. Let me save this and send it. All right. Save it and send it to you.
Is there a requirement that we initial those, or that's only on a division of subdivision? Usually, many initials.
You want an initial?
Well, I don't know.
I think we should.
We can initial. We got to sign it anyway, so that's fine.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is
Put some little spaces in.
all that.
What's the plan of it?
You get an empty pen in the house when you need it.
No, but that's a fair. I don't have it all set.
Here it is, CYA.
Okay.
In the subdivision, so we might as well do it. It's not even- Okay, so we'll save that.
Break out some ink with the feather. Sign some papers.
All right,
It's a magic moment.
so where are we now with the agenda?
8:15 back to again.
8:15. Victoria. All right, give me 1 second. Let me just-
Happy Thanksgiving,
Thank
folks.
you, John. Same to you and the crew.
Okay, so modification, I listened to everybody's comments at the last hearing. I mean, here's, I guess, my take about this, which is scope of it certainly, I think, is up for discussion. What it applies to commercial versus subdivision, up for discussion. My only feeling is, right, I mean, I having some ability to, I think one of the things that we've had to deal with is that if an application of a large size comes in and it is zoned correctly, and they can deal with some of the issues that come up, there's difficulty in denying it from the board standpoint. So that, to some degree, is the situation I want to prevent, that if the board wants to deny something, do they have the legal grounds to do so until we've dealt with stuff? So, you know, again, not that I think it's all that realistic that there's going to be that type of large application anytime soon in Southwick, but that's my concern. And, you know, I appreciate that people don't want to stifle business development and expansion and what have you, and we can certainly talk about the terms of it, but in my mind, we've had a moratorium on development in this town for the last year and a half. With the, in large part, with the Water Commission.
Yeah,
issuing a moratorium on that.
tying it to city water.
City
Not
water,
putting
that's
wells
right.
in.
That's correct.
That's-
No, I agree with that.
Basically, there is no moratorium.
Well,
On Day Street,
If a development wanted to put their own well in, they're perfectly capable of doing so.
that's absolutely correct. What is more preferable to a business or to a homeowner?
Right.
Right? I mean, they'd rather be on town water.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's not a complete moratorium, but it's not an insignificant moratorium. And you know, I mean, I don't think anybody's really complained much about it. So,
Well, the only requirement that a development has to be on public water is for a condominium, apartments and condominiums. In the bylaw, it requires a connection to public water.
no, but I think it's preferable, right? I think,
I
I
don't
think
know,
a lot of people,
Noble Steed is on wells. Wells and septic.
oh, no, I'm sure anything over, you know, when they do
Works out well.
anything on the west side of town is in all likelihood they're gonna end up on wells if they do any development out that side. But, I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, my worry is about something coming in that is gonna cause issues that we're not necessarily prepared to deal with because of what's in the bylaws now. But, I mean, I guess I'm also putting this in the context of the idea of what, at least as Diane had proposed to come down the pipe, which is a sort of increased scope of review for larger projects as a structure. That to me seems reasonable, right? I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't necessarily spend more time on, I mean, I think you do anyways, but giving you more tools and more things to look at for a bigger project doesn't seem unreasonable to me. And so, but again, that's not where we stand right now. We don't have those tools necessarily to do that. So,
Well, at town meeting, we got the bylaw passed where we can
have that.
employ a consultant.
but what do you mean?
You know, usually traffic is the big issue on a lot of these larger projects is the traffic. So we should be utilizing consultants. I don't know. Even after we get the reports back from the consultant, we have to decide if the impact is too big or not. How you deal with it, maybe require a traffic light or widening of the street, I don't know. Reconfiguration of an intersection, something like that.
If you were to do this, at what point do you start? You put a start date, and Morecambe starts at this date? If everybody prior to that is okay, and everybody after that is not okay, or?
Just like everything else, when it gets past the town meeting, it becomes a bylaw, and then it would have an expiration date like any other. I mean, I think moratoriums are required to, in large part, I think legally required to have an end date, but we certainly would put one on there.
Like more of a start date.
Yeah, the start date would be when, if and when it got passed at the town meeting.
Then 90 days,
Right.
90 days
90
after.
that. So any
the Attorney
applications,
General to
process or
the
re,
bylaw.
out of that.
It's a gray area. I mean, it technically is applicable when it gets passed, though it hasn't been approved, it reverts, once the Attorney General approves it, it reverts back to that passage date, right? So,
So if somebody has something
Bit of a
in the
gray
works,
area,
so
yeah.
somebody has something in the pipeline and it passes, does that shut this project down and he loses all that money invested?
no, you don't retroactively apply anything that passes a town meeting unless I guess it explicitly says so, but those are rare. if
Well,
they're legal at all.
he's suggesting that somebody could be looking into it and then they didn't get the application in until after the meeting. Is that what you're
No,
meaning?
no, I'm
What they're
saying,
talking about, someplace already.
if people got something, right, if somebody has
No,
money
somebody's already
invested
started
in a
construction
project
They've already got
prior,
it.
prior to it.
Well, what's gonna happen
Right,
is
but
you are
money
gonna have
being
a rush on
invested in
people
a
getting
project
permits
is not,
for a town meeting.
that's not an application, Dave. That's not. I spent $100 10 years ago on a project. I've got money invested in it. So would we, you
So
know,
we'd have
I'm
to
asking
put
for
the
your more
language
specificity of what you mean
Such
by
that
that.
it's, an application has been submitted.
Yeah, I don't think you have to put that in the, I mean, that's the law.
Well, we're
So the-
clarifying that question.
The
No, I
application,
don't know. I would
when the application
People
comes
could
in,
make an
that's
argument.
the
I've
law that
spent,
applies.
you know, a year
That defines
designing
the
this
application
project.
process,
Yeah, okay.
And I've come into the planning board, we informally discussed it. And, you know, I got the nod to go ahead. I put in whatever, $40,000-$50,000 designing this.
That's just.
And now you're telling me can't do it.
For a year.
You say, John?
But
We
I
can
also
sue
don't,
before we sued again.
I would presume Mr. Goddard would approach this possibility with anybody coming in. At this point going forward, might say, hey, FYI, this is, might be a problem, but
Ideally, or 40%.
I think that that is less of an issue than the general. Whether or not you're gonna
um,
do that.
yes, well, is there a question? Sorry. You're up there?
I just wanted to know if I
Okay.
could chime in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did kind of revise that if you wanted a copy of what I revised, and it did talk about applicants, if they had an application in, of course, they aren't subject to those on its effective date, on its adopted date. I would assume, like Jessica just said, if anybody's coming in having an informal discussion, I'm sure you talk about the water moratorium and advise them. I would assume you would advise them that this moratorium is about to come to a vote at town hall.
Right.
It wouldn't be in the dark on that. I wouldn't believe it would be in the dark on that. I also did put an end date in. I said at the last one that my clock was off and I didn't know when the master plan process would start, June 23rd, or until such special permit bylaws might be modified by major development review. And we were just talking about proactive modifications to some bylaws. Or if the master plan shall be completed and defined major development and related directives, giving it further clarification.
So my other aspect of this is more practical, which is Diane has been the one that sort of initiated some of these changes and to us. I have the suspicion, though I'm not sure I've ever asked her, but I suspicion that, you know, whether we put something on the town meeting or whether she petitions to put something on the town meeting, there's going to be something on the town meeting about this. You know, I'd much rather have a product that has taken into account everybody's pushback and then narrowly tailored down to what it should be, whether it comes through a petition or whether it comes through, and it's not to say that, you know, there's anything wrong with it now, though I think there'll be changes that I would make, but I would rather have something that, you know, seems more workable and is narrowly tailored that ends up on there. Because in all honesty, I think there's a decent chance of it passing a town meeting. From whatever form it comes in. So from a practical standpoint, you know, I just think spending some time with it and trying to see if we can get to a place where it's tailored appropriately is worth a discussion. Because I do worry about, you know, I mean, if something gets on there and it's broader than we want and it gets passed, we're stuck with it. So I just want, you know, not to say that that's a requirement for it to be recommended by the planning board, but I just think that that's a reality that should be considered too.
Recommended by the planning board? You're gonna recommend it?
No. I'm talking about at the end of the day, whatever, if we pass something, if we vote on something, we would end up having a recommendation from the planning board, right, at town meeting.
We got some,
I think having the discussion, trying to narrow down and trying to get to a place, you know, where it's a workable bylaw, and maybe we don't get there, but I think having that discussion is worthwhile because I think it may end up on there anyway. So,
But the procedure is we would send a memo to the select board.
That's if we are the
that's if we're the
ones
one.
presenting.
Now, in order for them to send it back to us to hold a public hearing.
Well, Yeah, that's a bridge to cross later on. I talked to-
Well, I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's
mean,
part of the
I-
process we need to consider. If we're gonna carry the water, then we carry the water. We send a memo with the sample of what we're intending.
But not in November.
Mhm.
That's the thing,
No,
right? I
not
mean, I
now.
think
We're still working.
I think
out
having
what we're
this,
sending.
even as a discussion item and kind of working through it.
Yeah.
And seeing
I
if
don't
it's,
understand that.
because you can't, you need to submit it,
Yeah, time.
you need to submit it within, what's the max? You have 90 days? Whatever it is, 60 days? I don't know. What, it's a short period of time that it has to go over to the select board. And so if we figured out, you know, we got to a place where we could vote in December
Vote on what?
on a potential bylaw change, it's useless because we just got to keep this thing open until
Well, we're running the same with the wireless
the wireless,
communication bylaw.
the wireless communication bylaw to me seems like it's going to need a lot more work and can take a period of time. You know, and I wanted to make sure that that got dealt with before town meeting. So I opened it up early because I thought there may be some time involved in potential consultants and things like that. This one seems a lot more, you know,
So we wouldn't hold a hearing on this until maybe February,
that's
if
probably,
we
yeah.
carry the water.
But I think having it as a discussion item and you can discuss it without having a public hearing on it, you can at least see where, you know, the board is getting to, right? I mean,
Just have it continue as a discussion with some text of the bylaw.
see if you can get to a
Some
place. I mean,
parameters
again,
on it.
you know,
Massaging of it.
don't, I mean, not that I need to tell you guys, but I mean, you don't need to listen to me. I mean, if you think it needs to be taken off and not discussed, that's fine. And we can, you know, if I'm the lone person pushing it, then take it off. It's not worth discussing. But if, you know, those are my thoughts, and my inclination would be to keep it on as a discussion item and see if we get to a better place on it.
Well, to add some context to the discussion, I suggest the board look at a ruling by the Attorney General on a moratorium in Saugus, Mass, which was on October 9th, 2019. And in this case, Saugus voted to have a moratorium. And the Attorney General, it was appealed, and the Attorney General's office upheld the temporary moratorium. But the discussion of that case does go into what the Attorney General's office looks at in judging whether or not a bylaw passes muster. So it's interesting to see how that language goes, but I think it would be worthwhile maybe to have that material available to board members to look at.
You want to just send out that site to me or John Goddard? And we'll-
Yeah, I don't know, John, I guess I didn't send this.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna, Doug, are you gonna tell me how many days it is so that I have to send it to you?
No, not at all. I
Okay.
just, I wanted to thank you for taking this up. I understand where this is coming from. I think, and I applaud Ms. Gale for bringing it to the planning board's attention for discussion. And I 100% agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that this is something that should be deliberated preferably by your elected planning board, because they're the ones who kind of, own zoning. I understand that it could come forth to town meeting as a citizen petition, then that's certainly within anyone's right to do that. But I think a collaborative process and the discussion and vetting of a fair discussion on it to see if it rises to the level of needing a moratorium is a fair discussion point. And then if indeed it does, to have a continued discussion around it, and then get to the point, if you would send it to the select board, to send it right back to you guys to have an official public hearing within the timelines of, I think it's 90 days. You have to close the hearing within 90 days of the town meeting is what I think it is. My only take on it so far, and I've read the basic text of it, I just think that you need, part of the discussion is to understand what is, to put it in perspective, in my opinion, is, and I don't know the answer. I'd love to hear the dialogue and understand the thought process behind it. I think that dimension, the unit, housing unit one, that's a good thought, right? We used to have a phased growth bylaw, right? Because that was mostly around impact to the schools and other services that come with that. On a business size, the dimensional one, honestly, I think the dimension's too small, but that's just Doug Moglen's opinion. I don't know the right answer because I think it's one of those things that you don't know it till you see, you have to take the project in its totality. And I think having the elected planning board in a public forum, have a couple of months, as you do, at least a few months, to kind of hash it through and discuss it. Because I think it's a double-edged sword we heard on, the project that came in front of you guys, okay, wasn't palatable, and the process worked, right? It never got a special permit, right? The public hearing was vibrant. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of discourse, and the project went the way it went. But I also think that you don't want to discourage that there may be uses, or there may be applicants either from town or local that would be interested to move to Southwick, that the town might be in favor of a development. And if it was, if memory serves, I think it's 60,000 square feet is the moratorium. What if they needed a 70,000 square foot building? So then they got to go in front of Board of Appeals to get a dimensional variance to overcome a moratorium. And that's the point. I think that's the great discussion to be had, right? Is what is that thing? And it goes back to that old, it was a Supreme Court decision, right? At one point, it says, I don't know that I could define it, but I know it when I see it, right? And that's part of the whole public hearing process with the planning board as the zoning board to hear a special permit application. And there's wide latitude with the planning board to approve or deny a project. It's very clear under chapter 185 that you guys do have a pretty wide berth to deny a special permit on a lot of different criterion, because it is a special permit. It's not just if it's this, and this, you must approve it, right? You guys have latitude because of the special permit nature of things. So I'm not here to argue that the process or the actual text of the draft that was submitted. But I think the way that you're proposing to approach it is 100% correct, is to have a dialogue carried on the agenda, have a dialogue amongst the elected planning board and the proponent, and try to work it into something that perhaps suits the town, right? And serves all the purpose that it's trying to achieve, right? That's my take on it. And I appreciate the time. I do. And I appreciate the effort of Ms. Gale to bring it forth. I really do. I think it's a good discussion to be had. But when I first read it, I didn't feel that it was appropriate to just immediately send it to the Board of Selectmen and send it back and start the hearing process. You guys have plenty of runway between now and a town meeting to kind of discuss it and have a good discussion, just like you did prior to me speaking tonight, with Marcus's point of view, David's point of view, Ms. Riopel's point of view, Ms. Thornton's point of view, sorry. And how you get to, how you come to a consensus to then have a public hearing, much like you're going to have it on the, the short-term rental is going to have a subcommittee, right? That's going to discuss things. It's not a public hearing. You're not at the point to propose a bylaw yet. That's going to go through the public hearing process, and you've got plenty of time to do it. I think this is similar in that vein. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
That's an interesting point. How about a subcommittee?
Led by Martha.
Led by
Subcommittees at this point.
Mr. Doherty.
I'm
We should have a
Sure, it's all
subcommittee.
about
We've
leading a
had one
subcommittee
for
in January,
marijuana,
February.
we've had one for signs, we've had one for parking. Oh,
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I
You want to
think-
separate out this conversation from
The
from
Board of
this?
General, yeah.
I mean, I think the moratorium can probably stand on its own. I think if you're gonna talk about what may follow it with the building process and things like that, that potentially could garner a subcommittee, potentially, I suppose, but I'm not sure moratorium is a subcommittee. Discussion, but I know I'm not leading it if we are gonna have.
Okay,
All right, any other comments or discussion about this?
You all have my other building size analysis.
That was
That was
handed out
attached to the
time, right?
last.
I don't know if you provided that.
I'm waiting for them to acknowledge that they do, but sure.
Okay.
Sure,
Did it
then yes,
have
we
the
do.
impervious surfaces on it at that point?
Let me double check, see, which one I have it in.
Or was that the original?
I think the only one I got,
Combined.
or
impervious
the only one I
surface.
printed out, actually.
Says combined.
I might have got it electronically, but I
It has
didn't
a
print
few
it out.
lines because there's no record in
Yeah.
town.
The
Yes.
Wally computer is there. Under pavement.
Yeah, because.
That's what I've got.
You got it?
All right.
You have a hard copy somewhere?
That
I
is
can make
correct.
that.
In
You're good.
front of us.
In your folder from last,
I'd appreciate a hard
not a
copy.
problem.
All right,
Me too.
Appreciate it.
anything else? All right, so what we'll probably do is move this under routine business, if everybody's okay with that, and sort of continue on carrying it, and we can discuss it if we have time over the next couple months.
Yeah, it's a big topic, it's not, gonna 10 minutes, it's a big,
Correct. No, and I don't mean just throw it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes here. I mean,
yeah.
if we have a meeting that's not, 9:45 when we're getting out of it, type of thing. All right. 8:20, routine business, master plan committee / process. Marcus?
Yes.
John?
Oh, no, please. That's not what I was.
At the last
I wanna
meeting,
interrupt.
John and Megan did a wonderful job counting the votes. And it was a close vote, but I was elected chairman,
Did you count the
chair of
mail-ins?
the committee.
Have all the mail-ins been
By
counted?
one vote, I was elected.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was everybody else absentee?
Jessica Whitmore Parker was elected vice chair. So the officers are set. Our next meeting is going to be December 16th, which wonderfully coincides with the Westfields Master Planning Committee. I was hoping I might get to attend one of their meetings, but our meetings are pretty much going to be set the third Thursday of the month. So we have that so people can, mark it on their calendars. We have now 19 members of the committee. We added 2 high school students who will be coming to the next meeting, hopefully, to introduce themselves. They'll be non-voting members, but they'll get a notebook like everybody else, and they'll be able to get emails from John, and they can participate in whatever issues or things we're talking about. So some good news, the committee voted unanimously to engage the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission as the consultant for both the master plan phase 1 and the housing plan. And since the meeting, John contacted Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and they are willing to do that work. So our next step is to have a meeting with them. Would be myself, John, Jessica Parker, the vice chair, and Corey Rowland, who's been a unpaid advisor to the advisory committee. So anyway, we'll have that meeting, discuss scope of work. John's already emailed over the draft materials that we've been working with. So they'll have that in advance of the Zoom meeting. And we'll try to come to some agreement as to what they can do for the money we have. And hopefully we can move forward using them because they're a quasi-government body. We can contract with them directly. So that should help us move forward more quickly. Otherwise, doing a request for proposals takes 2-3 months to get it done. So, I guess that's about all. Dave Spina is there, and
Did not get those right on Jerry.
And,
Because you were
Did
there.
you have anything to add on that?
So,
Good.
yeah, no, it was good.
Um,
Engagement.
All right, good. Short-term rental subcommittee.
Just talked about it last meeting, and she's giving me information, people that want to be involved with it. I'll touch base with them, see if we can figure out some time or date, try and get together, I don't know how it's gonna work.
Okay.
Now, I think it's something, resolved hopefully by summertime, because that's when it becomes a problem.
You just keep in mind, and it may be too tight, but you have the town meeting in May, right? So you have to get something in probably by
You don't like-
beginning of April, I think is usually when we have to get something in. So it's probably too tight,
I
but
think
just
so, yeah,
have
I
it.
think
Okay.
public hearing, yeah, it could go quick. Get a draft,
I get Kelly to put together first.
a lot of samples out there, I know.
No, it is what I
A lot of
mean.
samples.
We've sat on it for a while. It is what it is, and we'll get to it, in the proper time, not necessarily, not to be spread along. All right, September 21st minutes. Everybody get a chance to look at them?
Yeah.
Everybody good with them, with the changes? Okay, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Marcus Phelps, second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Mike Doherty, aye.
Marcus Phelps, aye.
Rich Hudson, aye.
Something I.
Dave's been aye.
Jessica Thornton.
Okay. And anything else before we close the meeting? Mr. Sutton,
Make a motion to close the meeting.
do I hear a second?
Dave's been a second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining?
Opposed to stay here.
Okay.
We have
Good
signed,
evening.